I woke to the sound of laughter, Sophia's laughter, soft and lilting, drifting through the walls. It was the kind of laugh that once warmed me, but this morning, it jolted me awake with a chill I couldn't shake. I glanced at the clock, 5:47 a.m. too early for her to be up, let alone laughing like that. I lay still, ears straining. There it was again, muffled but unmistakable, coming from the living room. Was she alone? Or was someone with her? A man should never wake up to his wife laughing unless he's the one making her laugh. I slid out of bed, the sheets cool against my skin, and padded silently to the door. Pressing my ear to the wood, I caught her voice. "Can't believe you said that," she said, amusement lacing her tone. "You're terrible." A pause, then more laughter. My stomach twisted. Who was she talking to at this hour? And why did her voice carry that edge? I eased the door open and stepped into the hallway. The living room glowed faintly, light spilling from the lamp. Sophia sat on the couch, her back to me, phone pressed to her ear. She hadn't seen me yet. I lingered in the shadows, watching. She twirled a strand of hair around her finger, a habit I knew well, one she fell into when she was flirting. Flirting? With whom? She must have sensed me because she turned suddenly, her eyes widening for a split second. "I have to go." "Talk later," she said into the phone, hanging up fast. Then she smiled at me, but it was a shallow thing, not reaching her eyes. "Morning, darling," she said, standing. "You're up early." I didn't smile back. "So are you," I said, keeping my tone even. "Who was that on the phone?" "Oh, just a friend," she replied, brushing past me toward the kitchen. "Coffee?" I followed, my mind already turning. A friend? At this hour? I wasn't buying it. But I held my tongue for now. In the kitchen, she fiddled with the coffee maker while I leaned against the counter, studying her. 12 years of marriage had taught me her tells, the way she dodged my gaze when she was hiding something, the faint tremble in her hands. But it wasn't just marriage that sharpened my senses. I'm a private security consultant, deception is my trade. I know lies when I see them, and right now, every instinct screamed she was keeping something from me. Still, I played it cool. "Which friend?" I asked, casual as could be. She paused, just a heartbeat too long. "Lisa," she said. "You know, from yoga." "Lisa?" "Maybe, but I doubted it." Lisa wasn't the don-call type. I nodded like I believed her. What was so funny? She shrugged, pouring coffee into mugs. "Just girl talk. Nothing important." She handed me one, our fingers brushing. For a moment, I remembered how her touch used to feel safe, loving. Now, it was tainted with doubt. I sipped the coffee, watching her over the rim. She was jittery, her movements off. "Is everything okay?" I asked, faking concern. She looked startled. "Of course. Why wouldn't it be?" I gave her a thin smile. "No reason. Just checking." We drank in silence, the air heavy between us. I'm Victor Hale, 42, a man wired for control. In my line of work, details are everything. A missed signal can unravel a job. I've spent years honing my ability to read people, to spot what they don't want seen. Sophia and I met 12 years ago at a charity gala. She was a lawyer then, brilliant and driven, and I fell for her sharp mind as much as her beauty. She quit her career to back my business, or so she claimed. Lately, though, she's been restless, talking about work again, about feeling stuck. I thought it was a phase. Now, I'm not so sure. Over the next few days, I watched her closer. She was out more errands, she said, or meeting friends. Her phone was glued to her now, screen tilted away when she texted. Then there was the perfume, a new scent, musky and bold. When I asked, she said it was a gift from a colleague. A colleague? Since when? The Betrayal kicker came later. She was in the shower, and I grabbed her phone from the nightstand to check something. It lit up, demanding a passcode. That was new, she'd never locked it before. I tried our anniversary, denied. Her birthday, nothing. When she stepped out, towel around her, I asked casually, "What's your passcode?" "Need to look something up." She froze, then said, "Oh, I changed it. Privacy, you know." I arched a brow. Privacy from whom? Her laugh was shaky. "Just in general. In case it's stolen or something." "Sure. So, what is it?" I pressed. Another pause. 7392, she said. I punched it in, it worked. But the fact that she'd changed it behind my back? Another crack in the trust. Sophia thought the confrontation was the end, that my walking away was the worst she'd face. She was wrong. That was merely the opening move. I'd given her a decade of trust, built a life with her, and she'd tossed it aside for a fleeting affair. Now, she'd learn what it meant to cross someone like me. I began with the money. Our joint accounts, savings, investments, all the threads of our shared life were ripe for the taking. Sophia had never bothered with the details, always leaving the finances to me. Her laziness was her undoing. I logged in and transferred every cent to a new account, one she'd never find. By morning, our savings read zero. Then I called the bank and froze our joint credit cards. She'd discover it soon enough, when her next frivolous purchase failed. But I didn't stop there. She had her own cards, ones she thought were hers alone. Years ago, I'd co-signed them, back when I still believed in us. Now, that trust became my weapon. A few calls to the creditors, financial concerns, I said, and her cards were cancelled, her credit line severed. She'd be left with nothing, not even pocket change. I kept tabs on her through the cameras I'd hidden in the house. That evening, she came home, still oblivious. She tried ordering takeout, her usual crutch when I wasn't there. I watched her face twist as the first card declined. She grabbed another, then a third, her confusion turning to panic. She dialed the bank, her voice shrill as they confirmed the accounts were locked. She slammed the phone down, pacing, hands shaking. Perfect. Let her taste helplessness. Money was only the beginning. Sophia thrived on her reputation, the flawless wife, the elegant ex-lawyer who'd traded ambition for love. I'd ripped that facade to shreds. I kept everything, the photos, the messages, the undeniable proof of her affair with Damien. I compiled it all and sent it anonymously to Damien's fiancée. Let her see the truth about her future husband and let Sophia feel the fallout. It didn't take long. Damien's fiancée ended things, and the gossip spread fast. Sophia's name became poison, labeled a homewrecker, a failure at love and loyalty. Her friends vanished, her social calendar emptied. She was a pariah now, cut off from the world she'd clung to. I saw her unraveling. She called Damien, pleading for help, but he was too busy scrambling to save himself, his engagement gone, his own life fracturing. She had no one. Exactly as I'd intended. One night, I returned home to find her sitting in the dark, her face hollow, eyes swollen. She looked up, her voice fragile. "Victor, please, can we talk?" I stood silent, staring her down. She fidgeted, then murmured, "I know I hurt you. I'm sorry. But it's too much. You've destroyed me." I stepped closer, my voice icy. "You destroyed us first. My trust. My life. You traded it for a man who's already abandoned you." Her lip quivered. "It was a mistake. I don't deserve this." A bitter laugh escaped me. "You deserve worse. But I'm not cruel. I'm just balancing the scales." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I snapped. "You don't get to touch me anymore." She crumpled, broken. I turned and left, letting her drown in the silence. But there was more to come. I'd already started the process to sell the house, our house, her pride and joy. I'd listed without a word, let her find out when strangers walked through her sanctuary. She'd have nowhere to run, no funds to rebuild. She'd be forced to slink back to her family, a humiliated shell. Driving away that night, a dark satisfaction warmed me. Sophia had thought she could outsmart me, play her games undetected. She'd misjudged me badly. I wasn't just her husband, I was a man who could unravel a life with precision. And I had, without lifting a finger in anger. She'd carry this lesson forever: betray me, and I'll leave you with nothing. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I had to know. The next morning, after she left for yoga, I sat at my desk and fired up my laptop. My job gives me tools, trackers, surveillance gear, software most people don't even know exists. Guilt tugged at me for a second, spying on my own wife? But her laughter echoed in my head, her lies stacking up, and the guilt turned to steel. From my safe, I pulled a GPS tracker, small, discreet, perfect for this. I could slip it onto her car, see where she was really going. But I had to play it smart, keep her in the dark. That evening, when she got back, I greeted her with a smile. "How was yoga?" She smiled too, but it was tight. "Good." "Tiring, but good." I nodded, watching her kick off her shoes and head to the bedroom. I trailed her, leaning in the doorway as she changed. "You seem tense," I said. "Want a massage?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "No, thanks. I'll just take a bath." I smirked. "Alone?" Her laugh was forced. "Yes, alone. Need some me time." I shrugged. "Suit yourself." When the water started running, I moved. Out in the garage, I crouched by her black sedan and fixed the tracker underneath. Back inside, I checked my laptop. The signal was live, feeding me her location. Now, I'd wait. I exhaled, slipping into the calm, calculated focus that's carried me through my career. Sophia didn't know it yet, but I'm not a man you cross. If she's hiding something, I'll find it. And if she's betrayed me, she'll regret it. For days, I watched Sophia's every move through the GPS tracker. The data didn't lie, her car was parked at the same address over and over, sometimes for hours. An address I didn't recognize. My gut twisted each time I saw it pop up on the screen. Who lived there? What was she doing? I'm not a man who jumps to conclusions, but the pieces were falling into place: her laughter on the phone, the locked screen, the new perfume. Still, I needed proof. Hard evidence. So, I dug deeper. Using my access to public records, I ran the address. It belonged to a man named Damien Carter, 34, a political consultant. Ambitious, charming, and, according to his profile, engaged. A quick search showed he was well-connected, the kind of guy who thrived on risk. My jaw clenched. Was this the man she was sneaking off to see? I hacked into her phone records next. It wasn't hard, I'd done it for clients countless times. There they were, calls and texts to Damien's number, late at night, early in the morning. Dozens of them. My hand shook as I scrolled through the logs. How long had this been going on? How had I missed it? But I still needed to see it with my own eyes. One evening, when she said she was meeting a friend for dinner, I followed her. I parked a block away from Damien's apartment, watching as she walked in, her swaying in that confident way she had. Hours passed. When she finally emerged, her hair was tousled, her lipstick smudged. She looked satisfied. Rage surged through me, hot and blinding. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, fighting the urge to storm up to that apartment and drag her out. But I didn't. I'm not that man. I don't act on impulse. I plan. I wait. Back home, I installed hidden cameras in our house, small, discreet, the kind I use for high-risk jobs. Over the next few days, I watched her on my laptop, catching her furtive glances at her phone, her whispered conversations when she thought I wasn't around. I even accessed her email, finding messages that made my stomach turn. "Can't wait to see you again," one read. "Last night was incredible," another said. Instead, I let the anger simmer, turning it into fuel. I'd need it for what came next. As I dug into Damien's life, I found more than just an affair. He was dirty, embezzling funds, laundering money through shell companies. The kind of man who thought he was untouchable. A smile crept across my face. He wasn't. And neither was Sophia. I started to pull away from her, spending more time at work, avoiding her touch. She noticed, of course. One night, she cornered me in the kitchen. "Victor, what's going on? You've been so distant." Her voice was soft, concerned. It almost sounded genuine. Almost. I looked at her, my eyes cold. "Just work. You know how it is." She frowned, stepping closer. "Are you sure? You seem different." I shrugged, brushing past her. "Maybe I'm tired." "Don't worry about it." But she did worry, I could see it in her eyes. Good. Let her squirm. I met my friend Marcus for lunch a few days later. He'd been through a messy divorce, so I figured he'd understand. "I think Sophia's cheating," I said, my voice low. His eyes widened. "You sure?" I nodded. "GPS, phone records, emails. It's all there." He shook his head. "What are you gonna do?" I leaned back, sipping my drink. "I'm going to make her pay. Both of them." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Be careful, Vic, don't let it consume you." But it already had. The betrayal had hollowed me out, leaving only a shell filled with rage and resolve. There was no going back. For weeks, I gathered more evidence, built my case. I even found out Damien was cheating on his fiancée too. Perfect. I could use that. But Sophia was my priority. She'd lied to me, betrayed me, and for what? Boredom? A thrill? I'd make sure she regretted every second of it. One night, as she slept beside me, I stared at her, wondering how it had come to this. I used to love her, hell, part of me still did. But that part was buried now, smothered by her deceit. I imagined waking her up, demanding answers, but what would be the point? She'd lie, or worse, she'd cry, and I'd be the one left feeling guilty. No. I had a better plan. I turned away, my mind racing. Soon, she'd know what it felt like to lose everything. And when that day came, I'd be ready. For days, I turned myself into a phantom in Sophia's world. Her calls went unanswered, her texts ignored, and I'd vanish into the night without a hint of where I'd gone. When she pushed me, her voice trembling, asking where I'd been, I gave her nothing but scraps, work. Meetings. Out. I could see the confusion carving itself into her features, the way her eyes flickered with growing unease. Perfect. Let her stew in it, I thought, let her feel the same creeping doubt that had gnawed at me since I'd pieced together her lies. One night, I didn't bother coming home. I booked a hotel room, leaving her alone in that silent house we'd shared. My phone lit up the next morning with her desperation. Asterisk, where are you? Asterisk. Asterisk, are you okay? Asterisk. Asterisk, please talk to me, Victor. Asterisk. I scrolled through each message, my finger lingering over the screen, but I didn't type a word. Let her spiral. Let her choke on the silence she'd forced me to swallow while she played her games with Damien. After 3 days of this, I decided the stage was set. I drove back as dusk settled in, parking blocks away so she wouldn't hear the engine. I slipped into the house like a thief, moving through the rooms with quiet intent. In the living room, I sank into my chair, the one angle just right to face the door, and killed the lights. Darkness swallowed the space, broken only by the dim glow sneaking through the curtains. On the table in front of me, I set down a manila folder, fat with evidence, photos, texts, logs, everything I'd gathered to bury her. Then I waited. The hours dragged on, thick with tension, until I heard her key in the lock. The door swung open, and there she was, a shadow against the hallway light. She flipped the switch, and the room blazed to life. That's when she saw me, sitting there, motionless, staring. Victor, she yelped, clutching her chest. You scared me. Where have you been? I've been worried sick. I didn't say a thing. My eyes drilled into hers, icy and steady. She edged closer, frowning as she tried to read me. What's wrong? Why haven't you answered me? I've been going crazy. I nodded toward the table. Open it, I said, my voice a flatline. Her gaze flicked to the folder, and her hands shook as she reached for it. She pried it open, and I watched her breath snag in her throat. Page after page, pictures of her and Damien wrapped around each other, their secret messages, proof of her sneaking off to his place. Her face went white, her eyes darting up to mine, wide and panicked. Victor, I can explain. Explain what? I snapped, cutting her off. How you stabbed me in the back. How you smiled at me while you lied. She shook her head, tears brimming. It was a mistake. I was lonely, you were never here, always working. So I made you do it? My voice spiked, just for a second, before I reined it back in. No, that's not what I meant, she cried, stepping toward me. Please, Victor, let's talk. I love you. I don't want to lose you. I rose from the chair, towering over her, my shadow stretching across the floor. You already have, I said, each word slow and sharp. I leaned in close, my breath brushing her ear, and hissed, was he worth it? She recoiled, gripping the folder like it might save her. Victor, please. I'd heard enough. I turned and walked out, leaving her there with her excuses and the wreckage of her choices scattered at her feet. Sophia's destruction was a symphony, each note struck with precision, her life dismantled bar by bar until the melody of her betrayal lay in ruins. But the performance wasn't over. Damien, the swaggering fool who'd dared to trespass into my domain, still strutted through his days. He thought he'd escaped the fallout of Sophia's collapse, that he could slip back into his charmed existence unscathed. He was gravely mistaken. I'd reserved the grand finale for him, and I intended to relish every second of his descent into oblivion. I'd spent weeks laying the groundwork, gathering the threads of Damien's deceit like a spider weaving a web. His crimes, embezzlement from his firm, fraudulent deals with unsuspecting clients, a trail of financial breadcrumbs leading straight to his grubby hands, were now all loaded in my arsenal. With a single pull of the trigger, I unleashed chaos. Anonymous packages arrived at his employer's desk, his clients' inboxes, and the local authorities' doorstep, each brimming with irrefutable proof of his misdeeds. Within 48 hours, the headlines screamed his name, *City financier exposed in multi-million-dollar scandal. His boss didn't hesitate, Damien was out, his office cleared before the ink on the morning papers dried. Clients abandoned him like rats fleeing a sinking ship, their trust replaced by disgust. But public humiliation was merely the overture. I wanted Damien to feel the ground erode beneath him, to taste the acrid sting of loss as I had when I first uncovered his affair with Sophia in those grainy, gut-wrenching photos. His disgrace was spreading, but I was just warming up. Damien thrived on excess, sleek sports cars that purred through the city, tailored suits that screamed wealth, a penthouse perched high above the skyline he believed he ruled. It was all a house of cards, built on the shaky foundation of his illicit gains. The authorities had frozen his known accounts, but I knew better. Men like Damien always had a contingency, a secret stash tucked away in some offshore haven. I'd anticipated that. Over the years, I'd cultivated a network of discreet allies, fixers, hackers, shadow dwellers who could erase a man's lifeline with a few whispered words. One call, one favor cashed in, and Damien's rainy day fund evaporated. I pictured him logging into his Cayman Islands account, expecting salvation, only to find a hollow-shelled zeros mocking him where millions once sat. The image of his face crumpling, eyes wide with dawning horror, sent a shiver of delight down my spine. Damien's arrogance was his lifeblood, the fuel for his swaggering charm. He fancied himself a puppet master, pulling strings and bending others to his will. I'd make that delusion his undoing. Among the treasures I'd unearthed were his messages to Sophia, arrogant, taunting missives where he crowed about winning her from me, sneering at my supposed weakness. I'd kept them all, a digital dossier of his vanity. Now, I set them free. Copies flooded the inboxes of his ex-lovers, his casual flings, even the socialites he'd bragged. I didn't stop there. His mother received a curated selection, her golden boy's filth laid bare. His sister, too, let her see the brother she'd idolized reduced to a leering cad. Word spread like wildfire, whispers turning to shouts as his carefully curated image imploded. Every smirk he'd flashed, every door his charm had opened, slammed shut in unison. I wanted him to feel the weight of their scorn, to hear the laughter behind his back. Disgrace and poverty weren't enough. I enlisted a professional, a silent specter skilled in the art of presence without intrusion. No threats, no violence, just a persistent shadow. A man lingering across the street from Damien's crumbling apartment, a car idling too long in his peripheral vision, a figure nursing a drink at the far end of his usual haunts. Day after day, the pressure mounted. I heard through my contacts that he'd begun to crack, snapping at strangers, jumping at shadows, his once steady hands trembling as he poured his morning coffee. Sleep eluded him, his nights haunted by the unknown. I'd seen his kind before, brash until the walls closed in, then fragile as glass. He was fracturing, and I was the architect of his paranoia. Damien clung to one last thread of hope, a lucrative contract with a high-profile client, a deal he'd chased for months. It was his ticket out, his chance to claw back from the abyss. I'd known about it for weeks, courtesy of his poorly secured email account. Posing as him, I crafted a series of messages to the client, each one a masterpiece of unhinged vitriol. 2 hit send and watched the dominoes fall. The client cut ties within hours, their reply a curt dismissal that left no room for salvage. Damien's final lifeline snapped, and he didn't even know whose hand held the scissors. The beauty of it was its anonymity. He'd rage, he'd curse, but he'd never pin it on me. I could have stopped there, left him and the wreckage I'd created. But I craved the visceral satisfaction of seeing him shatter up close. I tracked him to a grimy dive bar on the city's fringes, a pit where broken men drowned their failures in cheap liquor. The air inside was thick with despair, stale beer, cigarette smoke, and the sour tang of regret. Damien sat hunched at the bar, a shadow of his former self. His once crisp suit hung off him, wrinkled and stained, his hair a greasy tangle. The glass in his hand trembled as he lifted it, amber liquid sloshing over the rim. I approached silently, sliding onto the stool beside him. He didn't notice me at first, his gaze lost in the murky depths of his drink. I ordered a whiskey I wouldn't sip, letting the clink of the glass draw his attention. When he turned, recognition sparked in his bloodshot eyes, followed by a jolt of fear that straightened his spine. "Victor," he rasped, voice slurred and raw. "What do you want?" I met his stare, my expression serene. "To witness this," I replied, my tone a blade wrapped in velvet. "You broke, choking on the ashes of your own arrogance. You thought you could steal from me and saunter off into the sunset. Look at you now." He lurched to his feet, unsteady, his knuckles whitening around the glass. "You're a psycho," he spat. "Sophia ran to me because you're a cold, miserable. She laughed at you, you know that?" We both did. The barb glanced off me, fuel for the fire I'd already stoked. I leaned closer, my smile a razor's edge. "And yet, here you sit, a drunk in a gutter bar, while I stand untouchable. Tell me, Damien, how does it feel to have nothing left? No money, no women, no pride, just a void where your life used to be." He swung at me, a clumsy, desperate arc. I shifted aside effortlessly, his fist smashing into the bar with a crack that drew a yelp of pain. The bartender barked a warning, but I raised a hand to silence him. I didn't need to strike Damien, his own ruin was punishment enough. "Sophia's finished too," I said, watching his face twist with impotent fury. "You pulled her into your mess, and now you're both ghosts. Was she worth it?" He glared at me, chest heaving, but words failed him. I rose, leaving him sprawled there a pitiful wreck amid the spilled whiskey and shattered bravado. As I stepped into the cool night air, a quiet triumph settled over me. Sophia was broken, Damien was obliterated, and I'd engineered it all with surgical precision. One loose end remained. Damien's fiancée, or ex-fiancée, now that my anonymous tip had reached her, deserved the unvarnished truth. I'd already sent her the basics, photos, messages, proof of his infidelity with Sophia. But I wanted her rage to burn hotter, to sear Damien's fate shut. I arranged a special delivery, a package brimming with damning evidence, voice recordings of Damien's sleazy promises to Sophia, snapshots of his other dalliances, bank records tying his scams to lavish gifts for his lovers. A handwritten note, forged in his scrawl, sealed the deal, *, "You were just the fallback, darling. Sophia was the prize." Let her fury be the final hammer blow, driving him deeper into the dirt. Driving away, the city lights blurring past, I felt an unfamiliar calm. The game was over, and I'd emerged victorious. Damien would stumble through his remaining days, a paranoid husk haunted by shadows and betrayal. Sophia would carry her scars, a living testament to the cost of crossing me. My revenge wasn't just sweet, it was a meticulously crafted masterpiece, every stroke deliberate. I savored the silence, the weight of their ruin a crown I wore with pride.